This is Daredevil Annual number 1 from 2015. This has 2 stories in it. I will look at both, but up front I will announce the second story was the one I was interested in. This is a variant cover, and our first story, to get any preconceived biases out of the way, the writer of this first story is Soule man Charlie Johnson, and years ago I saw an interview with him where he said something that was supremely arrogant. He said something like, well, unlike the last few years, my Excellent Men stories will be the ones they are still talking about for generations to come. You will be pleased to know that absolutely nobody talks about his Excellent Men stories. And it's not even been a decade yet. I had never actually read his work before. I don't think so anyway. And it was weird. I didn't go in with an open mind. But then 4 or 5 pages in, I think I decided it was unfair to not treat this with an open mind. And so then I enjoyed a tiny bit of it, but then I decided it was a bad story anyway. This co-stars a former love interest of Daredevil called Soule, and she is a character with massive Michael Brian Benson stink around her. She has the unfortunate distinction of being introduced in between Kevin Smith's shite Daredevil run and Michael Brian Benson's shite Daredevil run. Neither of those bad writers created her. And so there is, or there was, maybe, some actual worth to her before Benson adopted her. She was introduced in Daredevil 9 in 1999. That's a lot of 9s. She is a Native American woman who is deaf. Her other senses having become acute to compensate. I didn't quite remember the story. It was so long ago that I read it. But she had some connection to Kingpin Man. I think she was his goddaughter or something like that. He was manipulating her, I remember that. He made her think that Daredevil killed her dad, or that Daredevil was a bad guy, and so they got into a fight. They sorted things out and romance was added. Obviously, I think the main thing that could arguably be compelling is allowing Daredevil to have a friend and ally who can almost share in his disability. God, that sounds horrible. Maybe it's not a good idea at all. I'm not sure. I don't think about Daredevil that much. What I can say is fucking terrible is not long after her creation, Michael Brian Benson started writing her and tried to make her into his character. He spotted a character that had only recently debuted, and he could potentially hoodwink everyone into thinking he created this character. He put her on the Avengers, and the only reason he put her on the Avengers was because Marvel wouldn't let him put Daredevil on the Avengers. Then he gave up on that to make Hawkeye start wearing the ninja costume she had instead. He also had her fuck Hawkeye. After that, Benson forgot about Echo the minute Hawkeye took over her ninja shit, and she disappeared from the Avengers books without mention. Last I saw, Benson had a fuck Moon Man, and then she died. That's all women ever do in Benson's books. They fuck the guys. Spider-Girl fucked almost the entire roster of his Avengers. She is back now, and fanfictionist Aaron Jason made her Phoenix, because Marvel wouldn't let him make his waifu, Natalie Portman 4, Phoenix. So yeah, I think it's fair to say, independent of any potential to the character's original creator or story, I hate this character right now. Bad writers have made her completely without merit. I wanted to talk about her because the one part of this story I liked was, in many ways, she's not written the way Benson or Jason write her. She is treated first like a character, rather than a depository for fictional cum. The plot is horrible. She goes to a concert, and everyone who can hear is transformed into slave monsters. It's clout. There's no motivation or reason for this scheme to take over a concert and transform everyone into sound entities with evil frequencies. But what I liked was Echo runs straight to Daredevil and covers his ears because his keen hearing would hear the song that would transform him into a slave. I like that. It was a good way to have these two characters crash into each other again. And their reunion is the best thing about this story. I know I am silly and not the traditional comic book reader, but I would be fine if they dropped this atrocious cloud plot and instead it was an entire annual based around these two characters reuniting and rekindling a friendship. The artwork isn't great, and there are more than a few parts where it is unclear in what it is meant to be shown. And I am none the wiser to why Daredevil is wearing black again. But the exact part of no return for me was when we get into... I know a lot about audio recording and sound waves and broadcasting. I mean, I have a bloomin' degree in it. Soul Man Charlie Johnson, he absolutely doesn't. But he bravely guns down with the ship of trying to make it look like he knows what he's talking about. If Soul Man Charlie Johnson went to university with me and was also studying the same thing as me, this is someone whose work they wouldn't even submit for grading because it is so far off any fundamental basic notion of what he is talking about. I mean, I didn't even know where to begin picking apart his ideas about how noises are made up and his assertion that the way to defeat Clow is by Echo playing a song that is the opposite to what he played. In music theory, you can invert a song, but that is not what this in any way means. All the phrasing and incorrect terminology and bad audio babble, they are talking about inverting the waveform. I am back and forth about how much I want to explain how nonsensical this is. It's not just the core idea, but every single bit of information this issue purports to share about sounds is wrong. This is a waveform. The black part makes up all the frequencies and sounds you hear as part of the audio. The height, those little spikes going up, they are the volume. Simple. I assume almost everyone watching already knows that. This would be inverting that. And remember, the black bits are what you hear. And it would be white noise with the midsection removed. But you probably wouldn't even notice those frequencies missing, because the white noise would be so loud and distorted. Before anyone writes to my university and demands they take back my degree in this subject, I know it wouldn't actually look like this. The white would either not be there, or it would just be a solid block without any markers. I'm simplifying the idea down so people can understand the basic idea as to why this story is very wrong. The idea in this story that Echo gans into a studio and plays a song that is the opposite recording to Clow, like it is the reverse frequencies. Yeah, I think even someone who did not know anything about sounds would be suspicious of these ideas. But to someone who knows his decibels from his hertz, it's fucking abominable. Maybe this is the story they will be talking about for generations to come. But for the wrong reasons. I actually thought of a clever way you could have had all this work, maybe. Have it established Clow is playing the equivalent of the inverted waveform. And then Echo finds there is a song underneath it, the mid-range frequencies. And then she plays a song to defeat him. That wouldn't be a good story either, but it would at least understand the concept of audio. Let's get to the second story, which is by Soule McKenzie, a writer from the late 70s and early 80s. This is his first professional work in comics in a long time. Soule McKenzie wrote some incredibly important Daredevils back in the day, but often gets overlooked because Hank Miller drew them, and eventually Hank Miller replaced him as writer. In fact, this story, and this is surely intentional, stars the bad guy from Soule McKenzie's final issue, Potterman. I will explain who he is, but the biggest problem I had here was it wasn't, and it still isn't, clear to me when this story is meant to be set. Other than Daredevil still wearing his red costume, there is no clue whatsoever. There is always sorts of continuity with Potterman that makes it hard to place anywhere. And even the way that Potterman is written, it seems at odds with any version of him from Daredevil history that I remember. Much like Echo, it has been many, many, many years since I read all these Daredevils, so maybe I have completely forgotten this backstory about his family being killed by mobsters. But even the depiction of Potterman seems completely off from what I remember about the character. He did have his mental struggles, and he heard voices around the time McKenzie wrote him, but he was never so sick in the head. He would murder someone by removing their heart and mutilating their body and cutting his initials under their stomach. With that said, the story is much better than the first one. The writing is enjoyable if the continuity isn't. We get to see Potterman fight Daredevil. It is not a very long story, but it is a Potterman story rather than a Daredevil one per se. Potterman has an interesting history. He was first in Daredevil 18. He was created by Stanley Lee and Junior Senior. And my opinion on Silver Age Daredevil is that it is poor once Woody the Woodpecker stopped doing the art. However, I do remember the Potterman stories actually being highlights after that. He was a bad guy that felt more down to earth and real than most of the others. He was just a costume designer who made himself this bad guy costume with saw blades, and he wanted to defeat Daredevil for various reasons over the years. The character was always humanised a bit, which eventually led to him reforming, and he was among one of the very first Marvel bad guys, like Sandman and Swordman, who actually turned their life around, and it stuck. Then Benson had him be evil again, without bothering to even acknowledge his redemption. Last I remember, he died. And that is another reason I am not sure when this story is set. And then yet another is he appears to lose his eye in this. I think this Potterman story is fine in a vacuum, but the minute you try to square it with any other Potterman story, it seems impossible. I didn't recommend this annual. I am happy Soule McKenzie got to write another Daredevil story. I would like to see him write at least 3 more before he dies. People really do him a disservice by overlooking his contributions to some of Hank Miller's very best Daredevil stories. Thank you for watching this video. Sound out your feelings down below. I will give this issue 7 decibels up.